Right now, I am 1 for 1, 100% correct when picking future champions. I said 3 years ago that Sean O'Malley was gonna one day be a champion, well before he had ever even fought a ranked fighter, well before he was even ranked. I said that at some point he would be a champ, and I was correct. As we saw a few months ago, he defeated Aljo and is now the current bantamweight champion. Now, I wasn't making videos back then. Well, actually I was, but on channels you guys will never ever find. I was not making MMA content at that point, but I have found another guy who I think sometime in the future is destined to be a champion. And if you're watching this video, you've most likely heard of him, and that guy is Ikram Aliskerov. Now, I was planning on making this video before the Warley Alves fight, however, I decided to hold off just in case Ikram got Ben Askren in 5 seconds, got knocked out cold in the first round, but he didn't, so now we are here. So let's talk about Ikram and his skill set and why I believe he is a future champion. He is 15-1 from Dagestan, which has produced some of the best fighters on the planet. He has a background in combat sambo. He's actually a 4-time combat sambo world champion, and his resume in combat sambo is crazy. You can see it on screen now, all of his accolades. To put in comparison how crazy it is what Ikram has accomplished, here is Khabib's resume in combat sambo. They're not even comparable. In fact, if you were to combine Khabib, Islam, and Umar's resume, who are all world champions, they're still not even comparable. Combine Islam, Umar, and Khabib have 4 world champions. Ikram has that by himself, on top of all the other accomplishments. But let's talk about his actual skills as an MMA fighter. As I said before, he is 15-1, and do you know who that one loss came to? I don't know if you heard of him. His name is Khamzat Chimaev, one of the best fighters on the planet. That is it. That is the only guy he lost to, and he made it an extremely competitive fight up until the knockout, where he defended every single one of Khamzat's takedowns. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Ikram has some of the best takedown defense I have ever seen. He defended every single one of Khamzat's takedowns, from double legs to low singles. Khamzat could not get this guy down, and that was in the first round when Khamzat is his most dangerous. We talk about Kamaru Usman having some of the best takedown defense of all time, which he does. He had only been taken down before the Khamzat fight twice. Once against Colby, who was one of the best wrestlers in MMA, and once against Leon, which he got tripped out. He wasn't really expecting it. But against Khamzat, he got taken down 4 times. In the first round, Khamzat pretty much took him down every single time. Now, after the first round, Usman was able to defend some of Khamzat's takedowns. I heard Khamzat broke his hand, so that could be part of the reason he wasn't as successful. But in the first round, where Khamzat is his most dangerous, he took down Usman easily, who has some of the best takedown defense in the UFC, whereas in the first round against Ikram, he couldn't even get Ikram down once. Now, I will point out the obvious. That fight was 4 years ago, so Khamzat has probably gotten better, but the same thing can be said about Ikram. Although Khamzat might have progressed in his takedowns, Ikram probably progressed in his takedown defense as well. And Ikram's overall wrestling as a whole, backed behind his combat sambo background, is pretty good. He has decent takedowns, especially for the middleweight division, which doesn't have a lot of wrestlers. So he's going to have a fairly easy time taking down anyone he wants to, and anyone he doesn't want to take down, like maybe Drakus or Khamzat, he should be able to defend their takedowns. But his wrestling is not what stands out the most to me. It's actually his grappling. His submissions, especially for the middleweight division, which doesn't have a lot of guys who can grapple too well, are elite. He has some of the best arm submissions I have seen at that high of a weight class. He has very good Kimuras, very good straight arm bars. In fact, 4 of his 5 submission wins have come from arm submissions. And if you go back and look at a lot of his combat sambo fights, he's always looking for arm bars. It's definitely his best and most effective submission. He has decent chokes. Now, he doesn't have many in MMA, but he also hasn't really been in the position to finish many chokes. He had a guillotine early on in his career that looked pretty nice, but he definitely has a very well-rounded arsenal of submissions. But where he impresses me the most is with his striking, because despite having a background in combat sambo, his striking is bordering on elite. especially offensively. Now, defensively, there is some work that needs to be done. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's start with his stance and his footwork, because this is what's most interesting to me. Look at how he stands. He stands so light on his feet, which I love, and he doesn't put too much weight on his front foot. He stands a little more back foot heavy, which allows him to be a little lighter. He's not as plotty, which helps him defend leg kicks pretty well. Now, he hasn't really gone up against anyone who will kick his leg too much, but in the little bit we have seen, his leg kicking defense doesn't look too bad. Now, he struggles a little bit more with inside leg kicks than he does outside leg kicks, which is something he'll have to address if he ever goes up against a southpaw. But because he doesn't stand so heavy on that lead leg, he doesn't have to worry as much about the leg kicks affecting him. And his footwork as a whole is pretty good. Nothing crazy, nothing flashy, but it's fundamentally very good. Offensively, Ikram's striking is amazing. He's decently fast, not extremely fast for the weight class, but he's not slow whatsoever. But he has an insane amount of power. In both of his UFC fights, he has knocked his opponent out in the first round. He is a very well-rounded striker. He can do a little bit of everything. He has very good kicks, good high kicks. He can throw roundhouses to the head. He can throw to the leg. He can throw teeps to the body. His kicks are very good overall. Not too much telegraph on them. In the clinch, he almost fights like a Muay Thai fighter. He likes to throw step-in elbows, likes to throw knees in the clinch, knees from range. He knocked out Warlley Alves with a flying switch knee, which is crazy. But it's his hands that really impress me. He has a very good jab. He knows how to use his jab well. It's very accurate, and his jab has a lot of power. He knocked down Warlley Alves with a jab. He also knows how to use his jab to find his range. Against Phil Hawes, he was able to use his jab, find his range, and find the right hand. And his right hand as a whole is very good as well. He's got a very good uppercut, a decent right hook, a good right cross, the same punch that knocked out Phil Hawes with. He's got a lot of power in his right hand. He's got a lot of power in both hands. So offensively, his striking is very good, very well-rounded. Can use all four of his limbs. Now defensively, his defensive striking could be better, and that's actually the biggest area of weakness I see in him. Against southpaws, he does struggle with the kicks to the body, the inside leg kicks, and an orthodox fighter with good lead leg kicks he'll struggle with as well. And his boxing defense is not very good. Now, he keeps his hands up and his chin low, which I like, but everything else I don't like. He doesn't really use head movement. He pretty much just moves away on a straight line, which is okay against lower competition, but as he starts fighting ranked fighters and fights up in the rankings against better strikers, that's going to be a real weakness he has. He also, when he throws his punches, leaves his chin exposed a little too much, and he can get kind of wild with his striking at times, which does leave room for his opponents to counter him. This lack of head movement was exposed in his only loss against Hamzat, where Hamzat was able to drop him with a jab while avoiding Ikram's jab. You can see the difference is Hamzat moved his head off the center line, Ikram did not, and Hamzat was also faster than Ikram here. That's another thing. Ikram's chin has not really been tested. He hasn't fought many power punchers, and the one he fought in Hamzat was able to drop him with a jab and then knock him out with an uppercut. Now, that fight was at 180-pound catch weight, which means Ikram had to cut more weight than he's used to. He's used to fighting at 185, and I actually think he weighed in somewhere in the 170s for that fight. So maybe the weight cut affected his chin. We don't really know, but it's something to keep an eye on in some of his future fights. And then my only other concern for him is his cardio. He has never gone 5 rounds. He has gone to a decision 3 times in 3-round fights, and his cardio didn't look bad, but in all of those fights, it wasn't too crazy of a pace. So his cardio is something to keep an eye on, but honestly, besides the cardio and chin concern, he has all the skill sets to become a champion, and in fact, I think he beats a lot of guys that are ranked right now in the middleweight division. He should be able to beat guys like Paul Craig and Chris Curtis, assuming his cardio can hold up. Imavov's a tough fight, but I think he'd beat Imavov. I think he'd beat Gastelum. Hermanson and Allen are tough fights, but I think he could beat both of them. I think he would actually beat Khamzat in a rematch. He'd be able to stop the takedowns, and he's just a much better striker at this point. I think he would also beat Paulo Costa, be able to stop the takedowns, and potentially take Paulo down if he wanted. And Costa's chin did not look too good against Luke Rockhold, and Costa's been extremely inactive, whereas Ikram's been very active. He could potentially beat Marvin Vettori, especially if it's a 3-round fight. Then it gets tough. I don't know if he could beat Jared Cannonier. You'd have to take him down, and Cannonier's a huge guy and has decent takedown defense. Robert Whittaker is his worst matchup. I don't see him beating Whittaker. Dricus would be tough because of how well-rounded he is. Izzy, he could potentially beat. I think he could take Izzy down, but could he keep that up for 5 rounds? I don't know. Same thing with Sean Strickland. I think he would take Sean down early, but could he keep that up for 5 rounds? I'm not confident yet. I have to see him go 5 rounds. If I knew he could go 5 rounds, I think he beats almost everyone. But this guy is only 30 years old. He has another 5 to 7 years of his prime. He's only going to get better from here, especially as he gains more experience in MMA. And that is why I think at some point in the next few years, Ikram will be a champion. He has all the skills to be a massive problem to a lot of guys in the middleweight division who aren't used to seeing that Dagestani wrestling, that grappling style he has. Combined with the striking he has on the feet, he is going to be tough for most of these guys to keep up with. And as the Sean Stricklands, the Israel Adesanyas, the Robert Whittakers, Jared Cannoniers, Marvin Vettoris, Paulo Costas start to sort of decline as they get older, I think Ikram will be right there to take their spot. But anyways, that is the end of the video. If you are new here, please subscribe if you want to. Turn on post notifications. Like the video if you did enjoy. Leave your opinions on Ikram in the comments down below. Do you think he can be a champion? Do you think he will be a champion? Do you think I'm an idiot for even suggesting something so stupid? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which will probably come out on Thursday or Wednesday. It'll probably be my predictions for UFC Austin, so I'll see you then.